Canadians.
Debate the honourable member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and it is an honour to once again enter into debate in this place and to do so on an important subject. Madam Speaker, I believe a subject that should be a unifying force amongst all Canadians, but unfortunately we have seen politics being played that is inhibiting the ability to actually accomplish what is being intended here. And Madam Speaker, let me first clarify a couple of things that I've heard some of my colleagues be asked questions regarding, and it's unfortunate because time and time again, Conservatives, and I have as well, have made it very, very clear that I'm opposed to conversion therapy, that all Canadians deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. Yet we see time and time again throughout this debate that there's been a politicization of what is a very, very important subject for partisan gain, and I find that unfortunate that has been the case as we've seen dialogue and in some cases a shutting down of dialogue. Madam Speaker, I've heard from many, many constituents on this matter. I've heard from folks from across Canada and on both sides of the issue. And what I've found very, very interesting is that the dialogue that has been offered by members of this House, and in some cases, not just members of the Conservative Party, but other parties as well, has been very constructive to ensure that there is a legitimate discussion, a respectful discussion about something that has truly had a significant impact on people's lives and that needs to be addressed. However, we have seen through the trying to dismiss some of, I think, the valid concerns that have been brought forward, that it has taken away from what could have been, as I mentioned before, a unifying a discussion amongst all Canadians. And I'm troubled that this has been a game that's been played by the Liberal government time and time again. Now, Madam Speaker, my colleagues have articulated very well some of the concern related to the definition of conversion therapy, some of the possible unintended consequences of legislation that was not specifically clear. In fact, I would point to members of the Liberal Party specifically that when the Minister of Justice was asked questions on this bill, he acknowledged that there were some challenges in the possible interpretation of the current legislation that they have before. But I want to go back a little bit further, Madam Speaker, because I think that the context for the discussion that we're having today is very, very important. This bill was introduced back prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, which, as we all know, ended up seeing basically the legislative agenda of government shut down for an extended period of time. And after Parliament was prorogued, there was a whole bunch of bills that had to be reintroduced. So I would first, to the inevitable questions that will come from members of the governing party that are somehow blaming Conservatives for being obstructionist, I would simply suggest this, that the 35-plus day delay, the committee dysfunction that has resulted from the government covering up, various aspects of investigations into their conduct and whatnot, has led to a significant delay. But what could have been an opportunity on a bill like this was not taken advantage of. Again, Madam Speaker, an opportunity to unify Canadians around an important discussion they didn't take advantage of. When they brought forward this legislation, back prior to the pandemic, there were some concerns that were raised. Some of my colleagues raised those concerns. Interests across this country on both sides of the debate raised concerns on this subject. However, when the government reintroduced this bill in the fall, they didn't take the opportunity to clarify some of the aspects of the bill that would have, I would suggest, been a much more straightforward process to allow Canadians to be unified around opposition to something that all Canadians are opposed to, and that's conversion therapy. But the fact that they did not take advantage of the opportunity to provide leadership and carefully consider some of the issues that had been brought to their attention, the result is that close to a year and a half later, we are seeing this debated, and there is some of the accusations that are being made by members opposite is certainly very troubling, calling into question the integrity of certain members of this House. And that's unfortunate, Madam Speaker. We need to be able to have dialogue, discussion, and ensure that we are all working in the best interests of our constituents. And Madam Speaker, when I have heard from constituents on this matter, including before the current C6 debate, I've heard members of specifically the Liberals talk about how nobody shares the views that myself and a number of other Conservatives have articulated when it comes to concerns. And Madam Speaker, that is simply not true. The fact that there are those who have raised concerns. The member from Sturgeon River Parkland who spoke previously talked about some of the challenges in relation to the committee work that was done, where the committee had a significant number of briefs that were submitted, yet weren't considered. Madam Speaker, it's our job as parliamentarians, as legislators, to ensure that we take great care in things as simple as the wording of a definition, and also the bigger picture and the possible implications of various legislation and the possible impact that this could have on, for example, people of faith, various folks within the LGBT community. And unfortunately, Madam Speaker, we saw that those concerns were dismissed. And that where there was an opportunity within committee to see a wholesome discussion, we saw that instead politics was played. And Madam Speaker, I find that very, very unfortunate. And it's further that we could have seen that the definition was fixed, some clarity added to this particular piece of legislation. And Madam Speaker, I would suggest to you that if this were the only piece of legislation where this sort of issue was brought forward, well, then it might be a fair criticism. But the reality is it's not. Time and time again, we see legislation brought forward by the current government that seems to be intentionally divisive. And Madam Speaker, that's not leadership. It's unfortunate that in a debate as significant as this, that we are seeing politics being played. Now, I have no doubt that there will be those that are ready to attack members of the Conservative Party who may vote against this. Well, to that, Madam Speaker, I would share a couple of brief comments, and I know I have about 2 minutes remaining. Madam Speaker, I'm mentioned before that I've heard from many constituents on this matter, including before the issue was initially voted on. And I took great care on both sides of the issue to speak to a number of those individuals. Many of them, in fact, countless phone calls, emails, and messages back and forth regarding this subject. And the respectful dialogue that ensued, I saw something incredible happen. And that's something that is unique to democratic discourse. And that was the idea of respect. The fact that not everybody who reached out agreed with the position that the government has or the position that I had in terms of the opposition to this bill at second reading. But Madam Speaker, after discussion, after dialogue, after respectful discourse, there was a level of unity that I found very encouraging. And it's unfortunate that that hasn't always translated into this discussion that we have on the floor, whether physically or virtually, into this House of Commons. And Madam Speaker, it is that sort of division that is causing a breakdown and a lack of trust in the work that needs to be accomplished by all of us as parliamentarians. And I think that the fact that, and in my case, I had hundreds of people, and the vast majority of which encouraged me to maintain my position on this matter, to share my concerns respectfully about the need to have clarity in this legislation. So for members of the government that would somehow suggest that this is an ideological escapade, that would be misleading at best and outright dishonest at worst. And Madam Speaker, I think that it's a troubling trend that we see within our democratic discourse. So Madam Speaker, let me simply finish by saying this. It is important for us to have respectful dialogue in this place. And I know that partisanship can often, and as somebody who can be very partisan, we need to ensure that at the very root of everything we do, that good governance, good legislation, and respectful dialogue, respect for Canadian and the rule of law be at the very forefront of all we do. So thank you, Madam Speaker. I do look forward to questions on this.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Yorkton Melville.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. During my presentation, I presented personal and emotional testimonies of those who found that gender transition was not a permanent solution to their gender dysphoria and who found worth in their own process of detransition. Now, these individuals had made their stories of detransitioning or deciding not to surgically or hormonally transition public. And they stress that they're in no way wanting to be disrespectful towards people's other personal choices. But as it stands, C6 would criminalize people like them. And so as it's currently written, could the members speak to the fact of how this will restrict the free, respectful, and exploratory speech of those with valuable lived experiences?
Battle River Crowfoot.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And the member brings up a very good point that we saw represented actually in much of the evidence that was presented to committee. So the suggestion that somehow there is universal acceptance of Bill C6 as a need to move forward to address these issues is simply incorrect. Madam Speaker, there is many lived stories from Canadians from coast to coast that have demonstrated that is not as clear-cut as is being suggested, and that the implications of this bill could be very, very severe, that would actually take away the rights of Canadians that are living their lives. And it is very, very troubling that could be one of the significant implications of a bill being passed that has not had the proper consideration and due debate around some of the very valid concerns that have been brought forward.
Comments? The honourable member for Winnipeg Centre.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question to the honourable member for Battle River Crowfoot is about a video which he posted on his Facebook page on May 21st, 2020, taken from the website in quotes, "Fix the Definition." This video promotes petitions opposing the ban on conversion therapy proposed in Bill C6 and features a prominent social conservative activist repeating disinformation about the provisions of C6. This video purports to give voice to those in the LGBTQ community opposed to the bill, but if you watch to the end, you see the notice, in quotes, produced by the offices of, in quotes, the member for Sherwood Park, Saskatchewan, and the member for Cloverville, Langley City. So my question for the member is, first, was he aware that this piece of disinformation and propaganda was actually produced by two of his colleagues? And second, does his reposting of the video mean that he thinks producing such a video is a proper use of House of Commons funds?
The honourable member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member for the question. I do find it interesting that the member would be quoting from an article from a supposed news site, and I say that with air quotes because it's funded by a wing of the NDP. So, Madam Speaker, I think that it is this sort of divisiveness that is taking away from the very real concerns that have been brought forward about Bill C6. And Madam Speaker, for this member to hedge a premise of a question in a way that somehow that alleges that there's nefarious intent behind the very real concerns that myself and other members of my party have brought forward regarding Bill C6 is exactly why. And I wish that my member would have listened more carefully. If that member would have listened more carefully to my speech, because the need for respectful dialogue is paramount in this place, so that we can all do our jobs as legislators to ensure that we are serving Canadians in the best way possible, and certainly I endeavor to do that each and every day, and I would encourage the member opposite to do so also.
Questions and comments. For Kingston and the Islands, a brief question, please.
Respectful dialogue. I thought that the member from the NDP, her intervention was extremely respectful. She asked a very simple, straightforward question, Madam Speaker, and the member chose not to answer it. So I'd just like to give him the opportunity to answer her question about that video that was produced.
The honourable member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And so my question to that member would be very simple. Has he had the opportunity to read some of the evidence that was submitted to the committee when Bill C-6 was studied? Because he would see very clearly that there is a wide variety of perspectives on this matter that demonstrate that it is not as clear-cut as the divisive nature that there are certain individuals in this House are trying to make it out to be. Now, I would say, and with great respect to many members of this House that have encouraged that effective dialogue, it's unfortunate that there are some that would stoop to such a low level that they would discourage what would ultimately result in better outcomes for Canadians.
Resume